I never thought I'd hear those words coming out of my brother's mouth. Dad left me everything, and nothing for you. Those words hit me like a punch in the gut, but I didn't show it. I didn't react. Not at first. I just sat there, trying to keep my cool, while the rest of the family watched in stunned silence. My brother, Jason, he couldn't even look me in the eye when he said it, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. I could feel it in the air, the tension, the disbelief, the quiet judgment from everyone else in the room. Something didn't add up. And I could feel that something was off, but I wasn't sure what it was yet. At that moment, I just thought, why would he say something like that? I had to admit, part of me felt betrayed, but another part of me wondered if this was just a misunderstanding. We had always had our differences, Jason and I. But this was something different. I could see the others exchanging glances, probably wondering if I was going to say something. But I didn't. I kept my mouth shut. No point in making a scene, not yet. There was something in the way Jason spoke, in the way he looked around like he was expecting applause for what he said. It was almost as if he'd rehearsed it. That didn't sit right with me. I remember my mom, sitting there quietly, looking between the two of us. She didn't say a word. She never does when things get awkward. But I could feel her eyes on me, like she was trying to read my reaction. I could tell she wasn't sure whether to defend me or just stay out of it. And I couldn't blame her. This wasn't the first time things had gotten tense between me and Jason, but this felt different. I kept thinking back to the way he said it. Dad left me everything, he had said. Everything. It wasn't just a statement. It was a declaration. I wasn't sure if it was pride, or if he genuinely believed it, but I had to figure this out. I knew my dad's will wasn't finalized yet. He'd been sick for a while, but he hadn't talked to me about any of this. Not once. And if I'm being honest, I didn't really think about it until Jason brought it up. I thought we had time. But now, I was wondering if I had missed something. My heart was racing, but I kept my cool. There was no way I was going to let Jason think he had me figured out. Not without knowing the full story. There was something about the way he acted, like he was trying to take control of something that wasn't his to control. And I wasn't going to let that slide. Everything. I thought to myself. What does he mean by everything? It felt like a power move. And that's when I started to wonder, what was really going on here? The words kept repeating in my mind, nothing for you. Why would he say that? Why would he even think it was okay to say something like that in front of the whole family? The more I thought about it, the more I realized, this wasn't just about the will. This was about something deeper. Something he wasn't telling me. I wasn't going to let it go. I didn't care how long it took, I was going to figure out what he was hiding. But the more I thought about it, the more questions piled up. Why had Dad never mentioned any of this to me? And why, after all this time, was Jason suddenly making these claims? Something didn't add up, and I wasn't going to sit there and pretend like it did. Not after what he said. I had to know the truth. Was he lying? Or was there something I was missing? The more I sat there, the more I realized I was about to find out just how deep this rabbit hole went. And that's when I decided, this wasn't going to end here. I had to dig. I had to find out what was really going on, because whatever it wasn't just about the will. It was about family. And it was about to get a lot more complicated. I tried to shake off the feeling, but it lingered. The words Jason had said kept echoing in my mind. Dad left me everything, nothing for you. It wasn't just about the money, or the house, or whatever else Dad had accumulated over the years. It was about something deeper. The look on Jason's face, the way he'd said it, like he was trying to rub it in my face. It was that look that bothered me the most. I could tell there was more to it, but what? I had to figure that out. I hadn't said much in that moment, but as the days passed, I found myself paying closer attention to everything around me. The little things, the subtle hints that started to build up. I couldn't let it go. And the more I observed, the more uneasy I felt. It started with the way our mom was acting. She wasn't outright hostile, but there was something off about her. She kept her distance, always smiling politely when Jason and I were in the same room, but I could see her eyes darting back and forth, like she was trying to figure out what was going on between us. It was like she knew something I didn't, and I hated that feeling. I couldn't figure out if she was on my side, or if she was just staying neutral, but it felt like she was siding with Jason. Every time I tried to bring up the topic of Dad's will, she would change the subject or give me a vague answer. It didn't take long for me to realize that whatever was happening, she wasn't giving me the full story. There was more to this than Jason's words. And I had to dig deeper. As for Jason, he started acting different too. At first, I thought it was just me being paranoid. But the more I saw it, the more it became clear that something was off. He was being nicer than usual, which only made me more suspicious. He'd drop by my place, act like everything was fine, and even tried to help me with little things around the house, as if trying to make up for something. But I knew it wasn't genuine. He wasn't trying to make amends, he was trying to manipulate the situation, make me think he was on my side. I caught him a few times, talking to our mom in hushed tones when he thought I wasn't around. I could tell they were discussing something important, something they didn't want me to know about. Every time I asked either of them about it, they'd brush me off. I could see the tension building between us, and it was starting to drive me crazy. I couldn't stand the feeling that they were keeping something from me. But what? That's what I needed to know. The small, nagging questions kept piling up. Why hadn't Dad said anything to me about the will? Why had he left it all to Jason? And what were Mom and Jason hiding? I wasn't going to sit back and let this slide. I needed answers, even if it meant digging into things I wasn't sure I wanted to know. As the days went on, the unease turned into a kind of quiet anger. I didn't show it, but I was angry. I was angry that Jason had been so blatant about it, as if I was just supposed to accept what he said without question. And I was angry that Mom was acting like she didn't care about what I was going through. I wasn't the kind of person to cause a scene, but I was starting to wonder how much longer I could stay silent. One afternoon, when Mom was over at my place, I decided to push a little harder. I casually brought up the subject of Dad's will again, trying to gauge her reaction. She froze for a second, and then quickly recovered, as if she'd been caught off guard. It was subtle, but I noticed it. I knew something wasn't right. And then, it happened. I saw it in her eyes, fear. For the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes when I mentioned Dad's will. It wasn't just that she was uncomfortable talking about it, it was like she was scared of what would happen if the truth came out. That was all I needed to see. My suspicions were confirmed. This wasn't just about a will. This was about something much bigger. Something Jason was hiding. Something Mom was complicit in. I felt a wave of frustration, but I kept my cool. I wasn't going to let either of them see how much this was affecting me. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being left in the dark, and it made me furious. Every day felt like I was walking around in a fog, not knowing who to trust or what to believe. I knew that if I didn't start getting some answers, I'd never get to the bottom of this. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that Jason wasn't just after the money, he was after something bigger. Maybe it was control. Maybe it was power. But whatever it was, I was determined to find out what it was, even if it meant exposing things I wasn't ready to hear. The tension between us, between me and Jason, was palpable. It felt like a storm was brewing, and I could feel it in every interaction we had. And then there was Mom, standing in the middle of it all, like she was trying to play both sides. I couldn't trust her anymore. Not with what I was starting to uncover. I knew I had to keep pushing. I couldn't let Jason get away with this. And I couldn't let Mom keep hiding the truth from me. It was time to find out what they were both so afraid of. I couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was at play. As the days passed, the tension between Jason and me continued to build. It wasn't just the words he'd said about Dad's will, it was the way he carried himself now. He was acting like he'd already won. Like the power was already in his hands, and there was nothing I could do about it. It started with small things, comments about how he was the one who had always been Dad's favorite, how he'd been the one to take care of everything when Dad was sick. At first, I didn't react. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of showing how much it bothered me. But inside, I was fuming. Every little thing he said felt like another attempt to rub it in my face. He was making sure I knew that he was in control, that I was the one left behind. It wasn't just about the will anymore. It was about power, control, and making sure I knew my place. I could see it in the way he walked around the house, taking over conversations like he owned the place. But I wasn't going to let him have the last word. Not yet. One afternoon, I was sitting in the living room, flipping through some old papers, when Jason walked in. He was acting like everything was normal, like the tension between us didn't exist. But I could tell he was just waiting for the right moment to make his move. "Hey," he said. Sitting down across from me. "Mom's been talking a lot lately about how things need to get settled. You know, with the house and everything." I looked up at him, not saying anything at first. He just stared back at me, his expression too calm, like he was waiting for me to react. But I didn't give him the satisfaction. "Yeah, I've noticed," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "I think it's about time we start figuring things out. Don't you?" His eyes narrowed for a second, just barely. I could tell he was getting frustrated that I wasn't reacting the way he wanted. "I mean, it's pretty clear who Dad trusted to take care of things. I've been handling everything since he got sick." That was it. That was the moment I couldn't hold back anymore. "Really?" I said, my voice low but steady. "Because last time I checked, you never mentioned any of this to me. You didn't even think to talk to me about what Dad wanted." Jason leaned forward, his hands resting on his knees. "I'm just trying to make sure things don't fall apart," he said, his voice more defensive now. "You're not exactly the one who's been running around, making decisions. Someone had to step up." The words hung in the air between us, thick with meaning. I knew what he was implying. I hadn't been there when Dad was sick, but that didn't mean I hadn't cared. That didn't mean I hadn't been part of this family. But Jason was making it sound like I was some outsider. Like I had no right to be involved in any of this. "You've been doing more than stepping up," I said, my voice sharper now. "You've been taking over." Jason's face tightened, but he didn't say anything. He knew I was right. He knew he'd been pulling the strings behind the scenes, making sure everything went his way. "Look," I said, taking a deep breath, trying to stay calm, "I'm not trying to fight you. But I deserve to be part of this. I have a right to know what's going on with Dad's will, with everything." Jason stood up, shaking his head. "You don't get it," he said, his voice rising. "You've never had to deal with this. You've never had to take responsibility. And now you want to waltz in and act like everything's fine." I stood up too, meeting him head-on. "I'm not here to fight you, Jason," I said, my voice steady but firm. "But I'm not going to sit back and let you control everything. This is a family matter, and I'm part of this family." He stared at me for a moment, his expression hard. Then, without saying another word, he turned and walked out of the room. The tension in the air was unbearable, but I couldn't let it go. I had to get to the bottom of this. I wasn't going to let Jason dictate everything. I had my own questions, my own suspicions, and I wasn't going to back down. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I found myself sitting in the living room again, staring at the old papers. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to stop until I got them. That's when I found it. A small, folded piece of paper tucked into one of Dad's old files. I opened it carefully, my heart racing. It was a note, just a few lines written in Dad's handwriting. Jason will take care of everything. I trust him. The word sent a chill down my spine. I didn't know what to make of it. Was this some kind of confirmation? Or was there something more to it? The note didn't explain anything. It didn't give me any real answers. But it did raise more questions. Why hadn't Dad talked to me about this? Why had he left everything to Jason? I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than I was seeing. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized I wasn't going to get the answers I needed just by looking through papers or having conversations with Jason. I had to dig deeper. I had to get to the truth. I wasn't going to let Jason keep controlling this. And I wasn't going to let him get away with whatever he was hiding. The tension between us had reached a breaking point. I knew things were about to get much worse before they got better. But I wasn't backing down. Not now. I was doing my best to stay calm, to keep things under control, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized how bad things were getting. The tension with Jason was reaching its breaking point. I couldn't just sit back and let him control everything. That night, when I was sitting in the living room, staring at that note Dad had written, everything hit me all at once. Jason wasn't just trying to take control of the house or the money. He was trying to take control of everything, our family, our legacy. And I wasn't going to let him do it. But I still had so many questions. Why hadn't Dad ever told me about the will? Why hadn't he mentioned anything about Jason taking over? It didn't make sense. I had always thought that Dad and I had a special bond. We'd spent so much time together over the years, especially when he was sick. We'd talked about everything. But this was something I hadn't seen coming. Jason had always been the one to swoop in and take the spotlight, but this was different. This wasn't just about inheritance. This was about power. And I wasn't going to let him have it all. The next day, when I saw Jason again, I knew things were about to escalate. He came over to the house with a smug look on his face, like he already knew he had won. "We need to talk," he said, his voice too calm, too confident. I just nodded, keeping my face neutral. "About what?" I asked. "About Dad's stuff," he replied, like it was no big deal. "We need to figure out what we're doing with everything. I've already started making some decisions, but I think we should go over everything together." I could feel the control in his words, the way he was making it seem like I had no say in the matter. "You've already started?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Without asking me?" Jason just shrugged. "I'm just trying to get things in order," he said. "Dad would have wanted this. You know that." I didn't say anything. I was trying to keep my emotions in check, but the more he talked, the more frustrated I became. "Look," I said, my voice low but firm, "I'm not just going to sit back and let you make all the decisions. This isn't just your call." Jason's eyes flashed with irritation, but he didn't back down. "You're not exactly the one who's been here, taking care of things," he said. "I've been doing everything. You've been nowhere to be found." The word stung, but I wasn't going to let him get to me. "That's not fair," I said, standing up. "You don't get to rewrite history just because you think you can. I've been part of this family, and I deserve to be involved in this." Jason laughed, a cold, empty laugh. "You really think you're going to come in here and change everything?" he said. "You're not the one who's been handling things. I have. And I'm the one Dad trusted." I couldn't take it anymore. I stepped forward, my fists clenched at my sides. "Don't talk like you know what Dad would have wanted," I said, my voice rising. "You don't know anything. You're just using him to get what you want." For a moment, Jason didn't say anything. His expression was hard, like he was trying to decide how to respond. Then, without warning, he turned and walked out of the room, leaving me standing there, furious and confused. I knew then that this wasn't just going to blow over. It was only going to get worse. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, the things Jason had said, the way he tried to push me aside like I didn't matter. And I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more going on here than just the will. I had to know what Jason was really up to. I couldn't just sit back and let him take control of everything. So, I decided to confront him again. The next day, I went to his house. I wasn't sure what I was going to say, but I knew I had to talk to him. When he opened the door, he looked surprised to see me. "What's this about?" he asked, his tone guarded. "I need answers," I said, my voice steady but forceful. "I need to know what's really going on with Dad's will. Why haven't you told me anything? Why has everything been so secretive?" Jason looked uncomfortable, shifting on his feet. "I'm just trying to make sure things go smoothly," he said, his voice unconvincing. "There's nothing to worry about. I'm handling everything." "You're handling everything?" I said, stepping closer. "What about me, Jason? What about my part in this? You don't get to make all the decisions without me." He looked away. For a moment, and I could see the tension in his jaw. Then, he turned back to me, his face hard. "I'm trying to protect you," he said, his voice quieter now. "I'm trying to keep things from falling apart. You don't know how bad things were with Dad. He couldn't even handle himself at the end." I stood there, staring at him, trying to make sense of what he was saying. "You're trying to protect me?" I asked, my voice trembling. "By keeping me in the dark?" Jason didn't answer. Instead, he just turned away and walked back into the house, leaving me standing there, speechless. It was becoming clear to me now. Jason wasn't protecting me. He was protecting himself. And whatever he was hiding, whatever he was trying to keep from me, I needed to know. I wasn't going to stop until I found out the truth. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was being hidden from me. The more I thought about it, the more it ate at me. Jason's attitude, the way he kept pushing me aside, the way he acted like he was in control, something didn't add up. I needed to know what was really going on, and I wasn't going to let him get away with it. After the conversation at his house, I knew I had to do more than just talk to him. I had to take matters into my own hands. I started going through Dad's old things again, looking for anything that might give me more answers. And that's when I found it. Hidden in one of the old boxes in the attic was a small, leather-bound notebook. It looked like something Dad had kept for years, nothing special on the outside, but when I opened it, my heart started racing. The pages were filled with notes, dates, and names, things I didn't recognize, things I wasn't sure I was supposed to see. I turned to the last few pages, where the handwriting became more erratic, more desperate. "Jason's been lying," one entry said. "He's hiding something, and I don't know how much longer I can keep it from him." My breath caught in my throat. I read the words again, trying to make sense of them. Dad had known. He had known that Jason was up to something, and he had tried to keep it from me. But why? And what was Jason hiding? The more I read, the more I realized that the notes weren't just about Jason. They were about me, too. "He's always been a good son," one note said, "but I don't trust him with everything. He's too driven by power, by control." I felt a pit in my stomach. Was this what Jason had been doing all along? Was he really trying to take everything from me, to control everything? The more I read, the more I realized how much I didn't know. There were names in the notebook, names I didn't recognize. There were details about family friends, people I'd never met. But the most disturbing thing was what Dad had written at the end of the book: "If something happens to me, make sure Jason doesn't get everything. He's too dangerous. Tell him the truth." The truth. What truth? I felt a wave of panic rush over me. What was Dad talking about? What had Jason been hiding? I wasn't sure what to do next. I had to confront Jason. But I didn't want to go in without knowing everything. I couldn't afford to be caught off guard again. I spent the next few days trying to piece things together. I contacted a few of Dad's old friends, people I knew he had trusted, but none of them seemed to know anything about the will or Jason's involvement. Everyone I asked just shrugged it off like it wasn't a big deal. But I knew better. There was something much bigger going on, something I wasn't seeing. Then, one day, I got a call. It was from a lawyer's office. I didn't recognize the name, but when I heard the words, Dad's estate, my heart skipped a beat. "We need to talk," the lawyer said, his voice cold and formal. "We have some things to go over regarding your father's will. Please come in as soon as possible." The call ended before I could say anything. My mind was racing. Was this it? Was this the moment I'd been waiting for? I drove to the lawyer's office with my stomach in knots. I couldn't stop thinking about what was in Dad's notebook. I couldn't stop thinking about Jason and the lies he'd been telling. When I arrived, the lawyer led me into a small conference room. He didn't waste any time. "We found discrepancies. In your father's will," he said, opening a folder in front of me. "There are multiple versions of it, and some of them don't match up with what your brother has been claiming." My heart raced as he continued. "It seems your brother has been manipulating the documents, trying to ensure that he gets the majority of the estate. But there's a catch, your father made some changes before he passed. Changes that Jason didn't know about." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. Jason had been lying to me, to all of us. And now, the truth was finally coming to light. The lawyer handed me a copy of the final will. It was different from the one Jason had shown me. This one didn't mention him getting everything. It was clear. Dad had left me a significant portion of the estate. The will wasn't just about money. It was about making sure I was taken care of, making sure Jason didn't take control of everything. The truth was out, and Jason's lies were crumbling around him. I left the lawyer's office with a sense of relief. But I wasn't done yet. I still had to confront Jason. I had to make him face the truth. But as I walked out of the office, I couldn't help but feel a sense of victory. I had the answers now. And nothing was going to stop me from taking back what was mine. I walked out of the lawyer's office with the will in my hand, my mind racing. The final will was clear. Dad had left me more than I expected, and Jason had been trying to steal it all. The pieces were falling into place, but something inside me knew I wasn't done yet. I still had to confront Jason. The truth was out now, but I couldn't let him get away with everything. The thought of him manipulating the family, trying to take control of everything, made my blood boil. I wasn't just going to let this slide. I had to make sure Jason knew that I wasn't backing down. I had the law on my side, and now, it was time to put the pressure on. I had been calm up until this point, carefully calculating my next move. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that it was time to face him. Head on. I didn't want to drag this out any longer. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to wait for him to come clean. I decided to go to his place. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I drove there. Every turn, every red light, felt like an eternity. I was ready. This was it. I pulled into the driveway, took a deep breath, and walked up to his front door. I knocked firmly, not wanting to seem hesitant. A few moments passed, and then Jason opened the door. His expression softened for a second when he saw me, but I could tell he wasn't expecting me. "What do you want?" he asked, trying to sound casual, but I could see the tension in his eyes. "We need to talk," I said, keeping my voice steady, not letting him see how angry I was. "I know what you've been doing. And it's over." Jason looked at me for a moment, like he was trying to figure out if I was serious. But I could see the hint of panic in his eyes. "What are you talking about?" he asked, stepping aside so I could come in. I walked past him without saying anything, not giving him the satisfaction of seeing me hesitate. I wasn't backing down. I wasn't the same person I was a few days ago. I had the truth now, and I wasn't going to let him twist it any longer. I know about the will, I said, turning to face him. I know what you've been doing behind my back. You've been manipulating everything, trying to take it all for yourself. Jason's face went pale. I could see the color drain from his cheeks. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He was caught. You thought I wouldn't find out, I continued, my voice calm but firm. You thought you could just control everything without anyone noticing. But you're wrong. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at me, his eyes wide. He looked like he was trying to come up with a response, but the words wouldn't come. I've seen the documents, I said, holding up the copy of the will. And I know about the changes Dad made before he died. You thought you could get away with it, but it's over now. Jason opened his mouth again, but all he could manage was a weak laugh. You don't know what you're talking about, he said, but his voice lacked the confidence it once had. You don't understand. I was just trying to do what's best for the family. What's best for the family? I repeated, raising an eyebrow. You mean taking everything for yourself and leaving me with nothing? Is that what you call doing what's best for the family? Jason took a step back, like he was trying to regroup, but I wasn't done. You've been lying to everyone, Jason. You've been manipulating Mom, making her think you're the only one who can handle things. You've been lying to me, pretending everything was fine, when you knew exactly what you were doing. I could see him struggling to hold it together. His jaw tightened, and his hands clenched into fists, but I didn't back down. This isn't just about the will anymore, I said, my voice steady. This is about control. You've been trying to control everything, our family, our future. But I'm not going to let you do it. I'm not going to let you take what's mine. Jason's face twisted into a mixture of frustration and disbelief. You don't get it, he said, his voice rising. I was doing this for all of us. I was trying to protect you. You never had to deal with the responsibilities. You don't know what it was like. I stared at him, not saying a word. He was delusional. He thought he was the hero in this story. You don't get to decide what's best for me, I said, my voice cutting through his. You don't get to decide what's best for anyone. I'm done letting you control everything. Jason stood there for a moment, breathing heavily, and then he spoke again, his voice much quieter now. I didn't want it to be like this, he said, his tone almost pleading. I didn't want to hurt you. I just thought. I thought I was doing the right thing. I shook my head, feeling a mix of anger and pity for him. The right thing? I said. Jason, you've been lying to me, to Mom, to everyone. You didn't care about what was right. You only cared about getting what you wanted. For a moment, he didn't respond. He just stood there, staring at me like he was lost. I could see the cracks in his facade, the guilt starting to creep in. But it was too late. The damage was done. I wasn't backing down anymore. You're not in control anymore, I said, my voice firm. This is over. You're going to have to face the consequences. Jason didn't say anything else. He just stood there, staring at the floor, lost in thought. I could tell he knew I wasn't going to let him get away with this. But even so, it was hard to see him like this. Part of me felt sorry for him. But I couldn't let that stop me. I had to do what was right, even if it meant facing him head-on. The tension in the room was unbearable, but I knew one thing for sure, things were never going to be the same between us again. I left Jason standing there, his words hanging in the air, but I knew this wasn't over. He was broken, but that didn't change anything. I had what I needed. The truth was right there in front of me, written in Dad's final will, but I wasn't finished. I had one last thing to do, get the whole truth. I couldn't let him manipulate me any longer. I had already given him a piece of my mind, but I knew this wasn't just about him anymore. It was about the family, about the lies, and about what had been hidden for so long. The pieces were falling into place, but I needed to make sure Jason didn't think he could walk away unscathed. I wasn't done confronting him. The next morning, I made a decision. I had to go to Mom. I couldn't go on any longer without hearing what she had to say. She had been part of this too, and I needed her to finally tell me what she knew. I drove over to her house, my stomach in knots. I knew this wasn't going to be easy, but I had to know the truth. When she opened the door, I could see the look of worry in her eyes. "What's going on?" she asked softly. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice calm but firm. "It's about the will. It's about Jason." I could see her hesitation, but she stepped aside, letting me in. I didn't waste any time. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, looking straight at her. "Why didn't you tell me about what was going on with Dad's will? Why didn't you stop Jason?" She didn't speak for a moment, and I could see the guilt on her face. It was written all over her. She wasn't shocked by my question, and she wasn't surprised by my anger. She knew. She had known for a long time. "I didn't know what to do," she said quietly, sitting down on the couch. "I didn't want to cause any more problems. Jason was so sure of everything, and I thought it would all work itself out." "Work itself out?" I repeated, feeling a surge of frustration. "How could you think that? Jason has been lying, manipulating, and you just let him get away with it." She lowered her head, unable to look me in the eye. "I didn't want to see you two fighting," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want to make things worse. But when I saw you both, I knew things were falling apart. I didn't know how to fix it." "You didn't fix anything by staying quiet," I said, trying to control my anger. "You let him get away with everything. You let him take control." She wiped a tear from her cheek, her voice shaking now. "I was scared," she admitted. "I was scared of what would happen if I said something. Jason was so convincing. He said it was the only way to protect the family. He said you weren't ready to handle things." I shook my head. "Protect the family?" I said. "You were supposed to protect me, Mom. You should have told me the truth." She looked up at me, her eyes filled with regret. "I didn't want to see you hurt," she said. "But I see now that I made a mistake. I should have stood up to him. I should have told you everything." I took a deep breath, trying to stay composed. "Well, it's too late for that now," I said. "But I need to know everything. I need you to tell me the truth. Did Jason know about the changes to the will? Did he know what Dad really wanted?" Mom hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Yes," she said quietly. "He knew. But he didn't want you to know. He thought you'd fight him, and he didn't want to lose control. He told me that Dad trusted him more, that you wouldn't understand the responsibility." I felt a lump in my throat, but I couldn't let it show. "Why didn't you stop him?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why didn't you stop him when you knew what he was doing?" Mom closed her eyes, shaking her head. "I don't know," she said softly. "I was scared. I thought if I said something, everything would fall apart. But now I see what it's done to all of us." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I had always trusted my mom. But now, I felt betrayed. Not just by Jason, but by her too. She had known what was happening all along and had done nothing to stop it. It felt like the foundation I had built my trust on was crumbling. But even with all of that, I knew one thing: I wasn't going to let Jason walk away with everything. I wasn't going to let him win. "I need you to tell me everything, Mom," I said, my voice steady. "I need to know what Jason is hiding. What was Dad trying to protect me from?" She hesitated for a moment, and then she stood up. "I'll tell you," she said quietly. "But it's not going to be easy to hear." I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. I was ready. I had to know the truth, no matter how hard it was. Mom led me into the kitchen and sat down at the table. For a long time, she didn't say anything, just looked at her hands. But finally, she spoke. "Jason wasn't the only one Dad was worried about," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He was worried about you too. He didn't want you to have to fight for what was rightfully yours. But he also didn't want you to get caught up in the mess that Jason was creating. He was trying to protect you from both sides." The truth hit me like a wave. Jason hadn't just been manipulating me. He had been manipulating Mom too. He had turned us all against each other, and Dad had seen it coming. He had tried to protect me from the chaos Jason was stirring up. And now, it was up to me to finish what Dad had started, to stand up to Jason and take back what was mine. I wasn't going to let him control me anymore. Not now, not ever. I stood there, absorbing the truth Mom had just revealed, trying to make sense of it all. Jason wasn't just trying to manipulate me. He had been manipulating everyone, Mom, Dad, the whole family. I had always thought he was the golden child, the one everyone turned to when things went wrong. But now, I saw him for what he really was, a man driven by control and power, willing to destroy everything to get what he wanted. I felt sick to my stomach thinking about it, but I knew one thing for sure, I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I had to expose him for who he really was, and I wasn't going to let him control this family any longer. But the question was, how? How could I make sure Jason didn't win, that he didn't just walk away with everything he had been scheming for? The answer hit me like a ton of bricks. I had to turn the tables on him. I had to confront him with the truth. I had the will. I had the proof. Now, I just had to make sure he knew I wasn't afraid of him anymore. I waited until the next day, when I knew Jason would be at the house, trying to cover his tracks, acting like nothing had changed. I drove to his place with the will in my hand, my nerves steady but my mind racing. When I arrived, Jason was sitting at the kitchen table, looking like he was waiting for something, maybe me, maybe the next step in his plan. But whatever he was expecting, it wasn't what he was going to get. I walked in, and for a moment, Jason didn't say anything. He just looked up at me, his face unreadable. "What do you want now?" he asked, his voice flat, almost bored. But I could hear the edge of uncertainty in his tone. He wasn't as confident as he used to be. "I came to talk," I said, holding the will in my hand. "And this time, we're doing it my way." Jason's eyes flicked down to the paper I was holding. I could see his pulse quicken, just for a second, but then he quickly masked it with a shrug. "What is this?" he asked, his voice suddenly tight. "Is this some kind of threat?" "No," I said, walking toward him. "This is the truth. This is what Dad really wanted." I slapped the will down on the table in front of him. "You've been lying to everyone. You've been lying to me. And now it's time for you to face the consequences." Jason's face shifted, the calm exterior cracking for the first time. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "Dad trusted me. He wanted me to take care of everything. He knew I could handle it. He knew I was the one who could protect this family." I shook my head. "No, Jason," I said, my voice steady but firm. "You weren't protecting anyone. You were manipulating everyone. You've been pulling the strings, making sure you got everything you wanted, while I was left in the dark." Jason's eyes narrowed, but I could see the panic starting to creep into his expression. He knew what was coming. "That's not true," he said, trying to stand his ground. "I was doing what was best for all of us. You don't understand the pressure I was under." "Pressure?" I repeated. "You mean the pressure to control everything, to take everything for yourself?" Jason opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. For the first time, he was at a loss for what to say. And that was when I knew I had him. "I'm done letting you control this, Jason," I said, my voice finally rising with the anger that had been building up inside me. "You don't get to decide what's best for me. You don't get to decide what's best for this family. Dad trusted me too, and I'm not going to let you take everything." I could see the weight of my words sink in. Jason looked like he was struggling to hold on to whatever control he had left, but it was slipping away from him. "You don't understand," he said, his voice breaking now. "You never understood what I was trying to do. I was just trying to protect you all. I didn't want anyone to get hurt." "You were protecting yourself," I said, my voice cold. "And you didn't care who you had to hurt to get what you wanted." Jason stood up suddenly, his face flushed with frustration. "I didn't want it to be like this," he said, his voice desperate. "I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was the one who could handle everything." "The right thing?" I said, staring him down. "You've been lying to me, to Mom, to everyone. You've been pulling the strings from the start, thinking you could control everything. But I'm not letting you get away with it anymore." Jason took a step back, his face crumbling in defeat. "I never thought you'd fight back," he whispered, almost to himself. "I never thought you'd figure it out." "Well, I did," I said, my voice firm. "And now, you're going to face the consequences. You're not in control anymore, Jason. You never were." There was a long pause, and for a moment, it felt like time had stopped. Jason just stood there, staring at me, as if he couldn't believe what was happening. And then, slowly, he turned away, his shoulders slumped. "You'll regret this," he muttered under his breath. But I knew, in that moment, that I wouldn't. I had finally taken back control. The truth had come to light, and I wasn't going to let him take it away from me again. Jason had lost. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. This was my family, my future, and I wasn't going to let anyone destroy it. Not him. Not anyone. I sat there, staring at the empty space where Jason had been standing just moments ago. The confrontation was over, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Jason had tried to take everything, to manipulate the family into believing he was the one who could control it all. But now, the truth was out. The will had been revealed, and Jason had been exposed for what he really was. A part of me wanted to feel sorry for him. He was my brother, after all. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized how much damage he had done. Not just to me, but to the entire family. He had turned us against each other, sowed distrust, and manipulated everyone into thinking he was the one who deserved it all. And for what? Power. Control. He had lost it all, and now it was time for the family to heal. The lawyer had confirmed everything. The changes Dad made in his will were there, clearly outlined. Jason had no idea what he was up against. But the real victory wasn't the will itself, it was what came after. The aftermath. I knew it wouldn't be easy, and I was right. The moment the truth came out, everything changed. Mom, who had been silent for so long, finally spoke up. She apologized for not being there for me sooner, for not seeing the manipulation that was happening under her nose. It was a difficult conversation, but it was necessary. We talked about what had happened, about the years of tension, the way Jason had controlled things, and how I had been left in the dark. But even through all the pain, I knew this was the beginning of something better. We weren't going to let Jason's lies tear us apart. It wasn't just about the will. It was about family, about rebuilding trust, and about making sure that no one, especially Jason, could ever control us again. But not everything was smooth sailing. Jason, now exposed, wasn't going down without a fight. He still thought he could manipulate his way back into power. He tried to contact Mom several times, telling her that I was the one causing trouble, that I was the one who had broken the family apart. But Mom wasn't buying it anymore. She had seen through him, and so had I. The conversations we had in the following weeks were tense, but they were necessary. Jason didn't have the power he once had. We didn't let him dictate the family dynamics anymore. For the first time, we were united. I knew there would be more challenges ahead. There were still things to work through, unresolved feelings, and old wounds that needed healing. But I was determined. We were stronger now, and we had each other. The final confrontation had brought everything to light, but it was the aftermath that truly mattered. It was about the choices we made after the truth came out. I realized that no matter how much Jason had tried to control the situation, he had underestimated one thing: the strength of the bond between me, Mom, and the rest of the family. No matter what, we would rebuild. The truth had set us free, and nothing could take that away. Jason was no longer a part of that future. He had made his choices, and now he had to face the consequences. As I sat back, reflecting on everything that had happened, I felt a sense of closure. The truth had been revealed, and the family was beginning to heal. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally in control of my own life. The past was behind me, and the future was wide open. I had won, not because I took everything from Jason, but because I had taken back my life, my family, and my peace of mind. It wasn't just about the will. It was about the truth. And in the end, the truth always comes out.